Joining me now is Congresswoman Sharice Davids of Kansas, where the flight originated. She's a member of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee and the Aviation Subcommittee. Also joining me is retired Marine Lieutenant Colonel Amy McGrath, founder of the Democratic Majority Action PAC. Thank you both for us to be here. Representative Davis, I want to start with you and let you talk about your community and how they are handling this, and also how you feel about the President of the United States weighing in and giving his own diagnosis of this crash rather than waiting for the NTSB.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is that this is so heartbreaking, and as more details emerge, this is heartbreaking for. Kansas is a small state, and we all are going to feel the effects of this. Our hearts are breaking for the families, and also have so much appreciation and gratitude for the first responders. Right now, we're in a situation where we do not have the facts of what exactly happened here, and the Transportation Safety Board, the Pentagon, the FAA, all of these officials are working together to do what they're trained to do, which is to investigate the causes of this tragedy. And I believe that it is it's not only reckless but irresponsible for any federal official, whether it be the president, a secretary, or anyone else, a member of Congress, to try to comment on what may have been the cause until the NTSB concludes their investigation.
Yeah,
and it actually.
Go ahead.
It's a matter too of respecting the people who have been impacted directly by this. The families deserve dignity and respect, and for there to be a thorough investigation.
Let me ask you this, because we do know some things. There are some facts on the ground. We know that there's normally two people in that control tower. Obviously there is a shortage of people in that control tower. But these are the things we know for a fact. On January 20th, Donald Trump's FAA director resigned under pressure from Elon Musk. We know that same day, this was on Inauguration Day, Donald Trump froze air traffic controller hiring, along with all federal hiring. The Aviation Safety Advisory Committee was disbanded on January 22nd. The buyout demand, which is not really a buyout, trying to get people to resign in exchange for some vague promises to existing employees, went out January 28th. And on January 29th, the very next day, we had this crash. And Donald Trump tried to blame President Biden, but here's the number of deadly airplane crashes that took place and fatalities under President Biden. The answer is none. There were none. He also tried to blame President Obama. There was one in February of 2009. So we know that 9-10 days into his administration, after he changed the nature of employment at the agencies that matter, this happened. As a member of Congress, do you feel that this is something that actually needs to be looked into a bit further?
Look, at this stage right now, what I can tell you is that I want to make sure that as a member of Congress and someone who sits on the Aviation Subcommittee, who has I've unfortunately had to perform oversight duties because of the tragedies that happened with the Boeing MAX in my first 2 years of Congress. The most important thing for us as members of Congress to do is to let the NTSB and the investigators conclude their investigation so that we can really take stock of what happened and make sure that we're appropriately addressing these issues. And again, I think it is irresponsible for any federal officials, the president included, to try to come up with off the cuff what reasons might exist.
Yeah. Let me go to you, Amy McGrath, because you've actually, this is something that you're very familiar with. Obviously, these military choppers and et cetera, and having served yourself. I want to play for you Peter Alexander, NBC's Peter Alexander, calling Trump out on the idea that diversity and inclusivity caused this crash. We don't have it. Okay. Well, Peter Alexander asked him that he had cited an FAA guidance, but the implications that the policy is new or that it stemmed from efforts that began under President Biden or the Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. He says it's demonstrably false. And he asks, and Donald Trump says, no, it's not false. And he claims that he changed the guidance that was on the FAA website that existed when President Obama established it in 2013. But we actually, our producer here, pulled the screenshot of what that guidance was during Trump's entire first administration. And it said the following: a key focus for the FAA's Office of Civil Rights is to identify specific opportunities for people with targeted disabilities, empower them to and facilitate their entry into a more diverse and inclusive workforce. And as indicated, this is a screen grab showing that he didn't change anything. The targeted disabilities under Trump included hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, dwarfism, the same things that he called out for Biden's FAA. Can you just speak to this idea that Donald Trump is trying to blame diversity and inclusion when he also practiced it as president?
Well, here's what I can say. Look, the standards for being an air traffic controller or for being a pilot in the United States of America are very, very high. They were high under President Obama. They were high under President Trump. They were high under President Biden, and they're high today. And so this idea that the current president would infer that DEI or that really anyone at this point, Joy, is to blame for this tragic mishap. I mean, we're still pulling bodies out of the river. Think about that. An investigation will happen. It will take probably a month, maybe more. There's a number of things that could have happened. This is a very busy airspace. Military flying is also very dangerous. We have the potential for pilots to have been on night vision goggles. There's lots of things. But you know what? Anybody making blame right now is wrong, it's irresponsible, and it's particularly shameful for the President of the United States to make it.
It seems that he's listening to Charlie Kirk, right? Charlie Kirk back in 2024 said that when he sees a black pilot, he wonders if they're even qualified at all. Donald Trump came out, essentially tried to blame diversity for this and throw it on their favorite, DEI, which is their favorite little, thing to beat all the time. But the reality is the people that he's put in place could be very clearly said to be not qualified. No offense to Sean Duffy. I'm sure he was really great on The Real World. I'm not sure what qualifies him to lead the FAA. I'm not sure what qualifies Pete Hegseth to lead the DOD, and yet that we're expected to believe they are qualified. Wouldn't it, in a sense, be offensive to other Black Hawk, pilots if Donald Trump is trying to tell them he knows better what this pilot should have done, and he knows better whether or not a diverse person has, the right to fly a Black Hawk or a plane?
Well, Donald Trump knows about as much as about airspace and aviation as he does about bleach and COVID. OK, he's not somebody that we should be listening to in that manner. And it is offensive. I will say that, aviation in general, and people need to know this, becoming a pilot or an air traffic controller, there are very objective standards for that. The aircraft does not know if you're a man or a woman. The simulator does not know if you're a man or a woman. You can either put the plane, land it or not. You either know the emergency procedures or not. You either are able to fly that thing within the regulations or not. And so to me, this whole idea about, minorities or diversity being a problem in aviation, this is probably of all of the career paths you can choose, the one that has the most objective standards to qualify.
Yeah, indeed. I'm going to give J.D. Vance the last word. He said when you don't have the best standards in who you're hiring, it means on the one hand, you're not getting the best people in government, but on the other hand, it puts stresses on the people who are already there. I think he doesn't understand how much that applies to his own administration, fellow members of his administration. Congresswoman Sharice Davids, that's me saying that, not you both. Congresswoman Sharice Davids and Amy McGrath, thank you both.